continue in my role as president of the Board of Ed for the coming year. I believe that with so much that we've got going on in the district, all of the work and initiatives that we've been working on this previous year, coupled with the fact that we will be doing a superintendent search, I would like to be able to provide that consistency with the board and continue to serve in this role for the coming year. So that is my very brief statement.
I think just as a matter of form, we should just make sure there's no other nominations.
Correct. Do we have any other nominations? Okay then.
I guess have to move to close nominations.
Yeah.
All right, I
And then
move to close nominations.
All right.
So I move it, so if there's one more second.
Second. Yeah.
All right. All in favor?
Aye.
And then do we have to then move to the election?
Yep.
Did you want to read that off, Neil, or
Sure.
shall I?
I move that the Board of Education elect Sarah Carrier for the office of President of the Board of Education for the 2021-2022 school year to serve until the next reorganizational meeting or until a successor is appointed. So that's actually the motion. Yep.
So moved.
Well, I moved it and Josh seconded.
Oh, second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Motion carried. Thank you all. Now we will move on to nomination for the Vice President of the Board of Education. I would like to make the recommendation to nominate Iris Bugliosi for the office of Vice President of the Board of Education.
So moved. Second.
Okay. On the question? Any other nominations?
No other nominations. I'd like to move to close nominations. I know Iris had given us a statement. I don't know if you think it appropriate to let the public know why she
Let me see if I
holds
have
that.
her statement. I know she did send a statement to all the board members. Let me see if I can reach that right now. So I'm going to give the very sort of condensed version of that rather than so her reasons for running were her time and availability. Knowing that board officers requires additional time commitments, her flexible work schedule allows her ample opportunities to meet the demands of that role. She would also be able to use her experience as a former board officer and board president. She also feels that mentorship is something that she can offer our newest board members. And then finally, she is completely committed to continuing the good work that's going on in the district and would work to continue our progress going forward. So those were, in brief, her statements on why she would like to seek this position. So we've closed those nominations.
I move to close nominations.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstained? Motion carries. So then recommended action that the Board of Education elect Iris Bugliosi for the office of Vice President of the Board of Education for the 2021-2022 school year to serve until the next reorganizational meeting or until a successor is appointed.
Would you like, Sarah, you're moving it? I'll
No, Mary moved it. You can
we
second it.
already did that, okay.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Motion carried. Now generally, for those of the public who are watching, we do the oaths of office at this moment, but unfortunately our district clerk is unable to join us tonight for our meeting, so we will be doing our oaths of office at a later date. So just to let everyone know. And now we will move into our work session, which is board committees for 2021, 2022. Now I know I did send everyone a rundown of what the board committees are, the 5 board committees of advocacy, audit, board development, communications, and policy. And then also our additional district committees, which we seek to have a Board of Education liaison on. Those are the Health and Safety Committee, building planning councils at each of the 3 buildings, Student Faculty Congress, the Equity Stakeholder Team, the Health, Wellness, Safety, Sustainability Steering Committee. So in the past, we have had Board of Education representation on the committees that feed into that steering committee, such as sustainability, culture of respect, and so on. seeing that there are so many district committees, we felt that it made sense to have a district Board of Ed liaison to the steering committee, as each of those individual committees report into the steering committee. So that a little bit lightens our load this year. But then we've also added in additional, which is the District Emergency Response Team, or DIRT, which is a new requirement looking for board representation this year. And then we also have our Athletic Advisory Council, the Village Bike Pedestrian Committee we usually have a liaison to, and then our West Putt liaison. So with all that said, I'm going to start off, as we have traditionally, start off with our newest board members and let them give their preferences as to what they were thinking. So I will start off with Anna.
I have some interest in the advocacy committee and the policy committee.
Okay.
And then the equity stakeholder committee and the athletic advisory committee.
Alright, now Omar?
Keeping score?
Yeah.
Just for the board's members' edification, and we have done this past in the district office, we're in front of a whiteboard, and we had, moved names around.
We have, Jen, yes.
And so as everybody expresses their preference, there may be some, kind of switches as we need to.
Yep.
So just because Anna went first, and somebody else is going last doesn't mean that that's necessary. I was going to end up.
Yes,
And
so
we also have
it was because
irises.
and as I explained to our newest board members and explained to the public, our district committees and the committees, the district committees where we serve as liaison, and our board committees, we have 3 board members or less, because if we have 4 board members, that would be a quorum of the board, and we would need to notice all of those meetings, and they would then fall under open meetings law. So we will keep to 3. But now I'll move on to Omar.
We're having some technical difficulties.
Oh,
You can go all
for Jen.
I'll be on the audit and advocacy, and if needed, on board development. Regarding the advisory councils, some of the building planning council.
Which building planning council?
PVC and or CET.
Okay.
Those are the ones I'm familiar with. Probably next year I'll do high school.
Okay.
Omar, you should just realize that they generally meet from 3:15 to 4:30 on the same day as the board meeting.
Not all of them.
Not always, but even
PVC in the high school are usually the same day as the board meeting in the
Right.
afternoon. CET is usually
It's-
sometime in the morning.
No, it's
No.
usually in the afternoon, but it's usually the off week from a board meeting.
Correct.
So it's not the same Thursday as the board meeting.
Okay.
But
Well,
you would
you're saying
for
that
either of
let's
those.
put that on the
Yep,
on the
absolutely.
roster,
So I've got
so
that
you can
down.
always reshuffle.
All right, and then Mary.
Thank you. I have interest in the policy committee,
Okay.
in the board development, is that something a new board member can be on?
Certainly.
Yeah, okay. And then the building planning council, I'm actually interested in the high school
Okay.
one, to have exposure to that area. The equity stakeholder team and the athletic advisory.
Neil and Josh, you can jump in. I'm not going to choose. You can.
Josh, you go first.
Okay, in the name of continuity, I'm going to put my hat in the ring for communications and for audit again, since both of the board members, other board members who are on those committees are no longer on the board. So I'll stick with those 2. I will continue with the Village Bicycle and Pedestrian Committee and Student Faculty Congress. And I think if necessary, I could do health, wellness, safety, and sustainability.
Neil?
Okay. I would do policy.
Okay.
I would do advocacy because that's what I've been working on, and tied to that would be West Putt representative, because I've done that for many years, and I think we have a good relationship with our other districts because of the work that we've been doing in West Putt. I would take on the dirt.
Okay.
And I can, well, let me ask a question. We have health and safety next to student and faculty comments on this
Mhm.
chart, and then below we have health, wellness, safety, and sustainability.
Yes, but the Health and Safety Committee, correct me if I'm wrong, it is a requirement that we have
Yes.
a board member represented
So
on
that's
that for
that's the
for New York
requirement.
State.
Oh.
And
That's-
that reports to,
It does report into that steering
Right,
committee,
but
but
we're-
that is the one
right,
that we do
thank
need to
you.
maintain.
Right.
But it could be the same person on
That's
both.
the board policy one.
Correct, yes, it could be the same person on both.
Mhm.
The,
Well, yeah,
could be.
look,
right, so Josh, if you're going to do,
if I do the one, I'll do them both. I mean,
Okay.
I don't think it makes sense to split it.
wonderful.
and then I guess I can fill in where we have anybody else where you feel you want to add someone, whether it's communications or development. I've done communications in a number of years, but I could, and I leave that to, let's see what other people.
I was just saying, you still need Iris and I to choose things.
Yep.
And take all the fun from us. So actually, in looking at Iris, I know she would like to continue. So Omar, I know you said that you would do board development if you need to, but I do know that you do have two other board committees. In which case, Iris and I could continue on in board development.
Okay.
With Mary, and then that would leave you with just with two committees, so you weren't overburdening yourself with 3 board committees. If that is
Absolutely.
agreeable with you. And then communications committee. I'm happy to take on communications, either Iris and I or she and I could talk about that and see who else which one of us has the bandwidth to take on communications as well. Because we do have 3 people in policy. And I think it's a good idea to have our new board members on the policy committee.
I can make a pitch for the communications committee. We have a lot of cool stuff that's ahead of us.
I will say, I noted that Iris had indicated a desire or willingness to do policy, but I don't think she would.
Correct. I did notice that she had that willingness to do that, but I know that we do have 3 people on policy, and I think she would be fine relinquishing that, because I do think it's good for new board members to be on the policy committee as well.
Did anybody sign up for dirt?
Yeah.
Neil did
Oh,
sign
you
up for
did?
dirt.
Okay.
Iris also indicated a desire to continue on the equity stakeholders, as well as the athletic advisory council. So that kind of caps off both of those groups. And
Who's the third person for athletic advisory?
I have Anna,
Oh,
Mary,
Anna.
and Iris. And then I think that gives us everybody. So yeah, Iris or I can do communications, or both Iris and I can do communications if she's available. Or Neil, you can do communications if you would like.
And it's just Omar and myself on audit, is that correct?
It is just you and I,
That's-
so
And we can do it with 2, that's fine.
Mm-hmm.
That'll do the job.
okay.
I would suggest that probably, since Iris at the moment has only one.
Iris does only have
committee.
one. She has 2.
No,
well,
she has board development,
board
equity,
development.
and athletic.
right.
Right, but she has one standing.
Correct.
committee.
She has one standing.
Oh. Mm-hmm.
And if she, if she feels, that either one of those two would be too much for her because of her own commitments, I could switch with her on each of them. I know in particular her work on equity stakeholders is something, actually her work on both of them, I think she will want to stay, but we'll leave that for her.
Well, she stated that she wanted to continue on with athletics and equity stakeholders.
Right.
And we've got her on board development, so then she and I can figure out communications.
If she should say for any reason, no, communications is too much, I'll just have one committee and the two others based on the work. Okay, I'll be able to step through that.
Alrighty. And that said, I would also like to, maybe if I could work with you on West Putt as well, if you need a backup on in terms of the West Putt liaison. And I think
Do we have all of the building planning councils covered?
I have Omar.
No, actually, we only have
yeah,
two.
actually we only have, so Omar, which would you prefer, CET or PVC?
PVC.
PVC? Alright. If anyone, is there anyone who would like CET? If not, I can take CET.
I have greater flexibility in that I will not be commuting into the city, but on the other hand, actually, you know what? I wouldn't mind doing CET because it gives me exposure to a building that I haven't been in a while.
Totally. I think that sounds great. So I think then that gives us everything.
That's the
That might have
fastest
been
we've
like-
ever done this.
Yes.
Record time.
Get that out of the way.
Yeah, to work that out. See?
I think
I'm gonna
maybe
send
I
you
know
all
more.
a preview every year, right? We'll make sure that's part of the
Always been that
normal.
quick.
Then everybody gets it all worked out in their head first. So that's great. All right, so I will hand all of these off to Tracy. She will put them together. And then as we sort of head into the summer, each of the standing board committees will schedule an initial meeting where you can decide who will be the committee chair, all of those administrative details, and then report back to us and let us know. So those will be the next step for that. All right. With that, we will move into consent agenda for the reorganization meeting. Recommended action that the Board of Education approves all items under the consent agenda for the reorganization meeting as presented.
So moved.
Second.
On the question?
Can you just give a second
Mhm.
so that we can review? I've said this for a number of previous years, and I'll just say it publicly now, is that when you look at the committees on special education, item 4.05, we have one parent who is listed as a parent member when a parent member is requested for a CSE. And that's true both for the CSE and for the subcommittee and for the preschool. It is not required that a parent participate on a committee for special education, but I will say that the parent whose name appears is an individual whose child graduated 2 weeks ago or 10 days ago, whenever it was, 12 days ago, from Croton Harmon High School. Under the law, a parent can serve as a parent member of a CSE or CPSE for a limited number of years after the parent no longer has children in school. At some point, that member is going to age out. And in years past, the board has had several different parents who must be parents of a student with an IEP to participate and to be on that roster. So I would just ask, and this is more for the public than for anybody else, I would ask that we are, if at all possible, we recruit and ask to serve, which is rather limited capacity, but becomes necessary when we must create a committee on special education with a parent rep, that we have other parents who can step up and help out the district. That was just a statement for hopefully the public and somebody coming forth. And
Thank you very much, Neil.
you hold on just one other second.
Yep.
I just want to make sure that there is nothing. Okay, the only other thing I would say as the policy chair, has been for many years, if you look at item 4.20, that provides us as a board with an obligation to review those various policies. Code of conduct, board member ethics, investments, purchasing. The investment in purchasing policies were recently revised by the board, and we are also supposed to talk about the open meetings law, and we are supposed to review building level attendance data and to review our policy and attendance if there has been a decline in attendance rates. I know that the administration circulated to the board members, and I also went to our two newest board members, the attendance information that did not show a decrease in attendance rate, such that we need to review that policy. I guess rather than spending the time to summarize all of those policies and review them and to review the open meetings law, let us just endeavor to do that ourselves so that we've met what we said we've done.
Absolutely. All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstained? Motion carries. All right. Now we will move into our regular meeting. So we will start off with a hearing of the public, which is an opportunity for community members to come in and address the board on any items related to the school district that they would like. We do not have any public here with us right now. We will have another hearing with the public toward the end of the meeting. So from there, we will move into our superintendent's report, and I will turn it over to Dr. O'Connell.
Well, good evening, everyone, and welcome to our new board members. I'm very much looking forward to our work together. I have a very short superintendent's report this evening. Just want to give the board an update. On our website, we had a filing requirement for our ESSER, that's the Elementary and Secondary Emergency Relief and American Rescue Plan Act, ARPA. It is on our website. It's under a heading for called Plan for Safe Return to In-Person Instruction. So that is a reporting requirement for all districts that it be posted on our website, and it is there. We also had a filing requirement with the State Education Department, and that is also in. What is in this document basically is how the district intends on spending those funds that are given to us. So the document explains some of that. For our new board members, if you were watching some of the preceding board meetings, we talked about the feedback from the community, looking at the feedback from the community, looking at the feedback from the Board of Education, as well as the Administrative Council, and basically took those funds and earmarked them in certain areas. So that's what one would see in the report. The only other thing I'd like to add, and you might be hearing some of this in the newspaper, is we at this point are planning for a full reopening of school in September. Now, what does that mean? We still don't have any specific guidance from New York State Education Department or out of Governor Cuomo's office. Until that time, we are just going about planning for our in-person full return. With that said, should there be a mandate to offer remote instruction, we would have to then give that thought at that time. But we have no such mandate as of this moment in time. So again, and for our viewing public, we are planning on a full return to school in September. We are continuing to monitor the information we're getting out of the New York State Department of Health, as well as the New York State Education Department, and we'll continue to monitor. But as I said, we are planning for a full return in September. And that concludes my report for this evening.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. O'Connell. We will now move into new business. Item 6.1, recommended action that the Board of Education approves the proposed settlement for the tax certiorari of RAA Realty Corp. Versus the assessor of the town of Portland et al. The county, Westchester County, index numbers 64015/16 as presented.
So moved.
Second.
On the question? All in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? Abstain? Motion carries. Right. A recommended action, be it resolved that the Board of Education of the Croton-Harmon Union Free School District hereby approves the side letter agreement between the district and the Aids of Croton United Bargaining Unit and authorizes the superintendent of schools to take all actions consistent with the terms thereof.
So moved.
Second.
On the question? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? Motion carries. Recommended action, be it resolved that the Board of Education of the Croton-Harmon Union Free School District hereby approves the 2021 through 2025 Memorandum of Agreement between the district and the CSEA Clerical Bargaining Unit and authorizes the superintendent of schools to take all actions consistent with the terms thereof.
Second.
On the question? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstain? Motion carries. Recommended action, be it resolved that the Board of Education of the Croton-Harmon Union Free School District hereby approves the Memorandum of Agreement between the district and the Croton Teachers Association Bargaining Unit and authorizes the superintendent of schools to take all actions consistent with the terms thereof.
So moved.
Second.
Okay. On the question? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstain?
Abstain.
Motion carries. Recommended action that the Board of Education accepts the food service management contract from Aramark for the 2021-2022 school year at a rate of $2.35 per breakfast meal and $4 per lunch meal.
Second.
On the question? All in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? Abstain? Motion carries. Recommended action that the Board of Education approves the per diem appointment of Joseph Bernardi for 10 days at $450 per day effective July 7, 2021.
So moved.
Second.
On the question? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? Motion carries. Recommended action, resolved that the Board of Education of Croton-Harmon Union Free School hereby authorizes retaining Michael Galino to provide consulting services related to health, wellness, physical education, and athletics in the school district on an as-needed basis, not to exceed a total of 50 hours, commencing on July 7, 2021, at an hourly rate of $100.
So moved.
Second.
On the question? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstain? Motion carries. Recommended action. Resolved that the Board of Education of the Croton-Harmon Union Free School District hereby ratifies and approves the amendment dated July 6, 2021 to the employment agreement between Dr. Deborah O'Connell and the Croton-Harmon Union Free School District and authorizes the president of the board to execute the same.
So moved.
Second.
On the question?
I'd like to make a note. I'm going to abstain from this vote, and I don't want this to be misconstrued as a lack of confidence in the administration or the superintendent. Rather, it's a reflection of the fact that I wasn't privy to documents and conversations that resulted in this action item.
Absolutely. Okay.
I'm also going to abstain.
All in favor? Aye. Oppose? Abstain?
Abstain.
Motion carries. Recommended, now we're moving on to 6.09, which are the proposed NISBA resolutions for board consideration. There is a resolution regarding the amendment of the open meetings law and a proposed resolution regarding the modification of the child safety zone statute or regulations. I'm going to turn this over to Neil, who drafted these NISBA resolutions for us.
Thank you, Sarah. To start off, just a matter of explanation for the board and for the public. Our district is a member of the New York State School Board Association, and every October, the School Board Association holds an annual conference. This year it will be in New York. You'll be hearing about that. Part of that convention is the conducting of a business meeting where, among other things, the delegates from each of the boards or members of the State School Board Association consider proposals for action items, advocacy items, other things that they would like the School Board Association to do on their behalf, many of them being legislative or regulatory in nature. And it's kind of the template or the marching orders for the State School Board Association to go forth and try to get changes in education law or other laws that would affect school districts. We, as a school board, have attended those meetings for many years and have in this year have come up to our advocacy committee with two proposed resolutions that the advocacy committee is recommending for the board to agree with so that we can have our district clerk submit them for consideration in October. The first is the proposed resolution regarding amendment of the open meetings law. We talked a minute ago, I mentioned about a review of the open meetings law. This, in essence, is our review. The open meetings law requires that all meetings of boards and meetings of committees and subcommittees of boards consisting of only board members be noticed, open to the public, and the public have the right to attend, observe, listen. And that is set forth in Article 7 of the Public Officers Law, and that's why we, among other things, send out K-12 alerts about every meeting and a weekly K-12 alert for every subcommittee and subcommittee meeting so that the public has the right to attend. The open meetings law is very specific as to how meetings must be noticed and how meetings must be conducted. And that open meetings law, those open meetings law provisions were suspended during the emergency declared by the governor on March 17th, I think it was, 2020, and were suspended until a week ago, or 10 days ago. As a result, we did not need to comply with the open meetings law. We did not have to meet in person as we are doing tonight. We could meet by video conference. We did not have to notice where we were when we were engaged in video conference. And one of the things that the open meetings law requires is that if a member is going to participate in a meeting from a remote location, that meeting notice must state that the public may attend the meeting at the location where that remote person is. So the notice must say, Haber will be, or a meeting will be conducted in this room, the community room, and in, for example, in room 232 of the Holiday Inn in Braintree, Massachusetts. If I happen to be calling in or video conferencing in from room 232. That creates a couple of concerns. The first concern is, from the way we see it, well, somebody can show up in room 232, or if you're doing it from home, because you have to be at home, someone knows that you're home, they can come into your home. The Committee on Open Government of the Department of State, which administers and interprets, it says that the place that you are must be handicap accessible, because you must make sure that anyone who is handicapped who's going to attend at that remote location can do so. So if you're in the basement, I'll get to 1 second, or you can't have your office in the basement and hold the meeting because it is not handicap accessible. Further, if I am in room 232 in Braintree, well, then I'm signaling to the public that I'm not home. It's an open invitation for someone to come and burglarize my home. What we have found in the past 15 months of conducting our business remotely is that we can conduct our business remotely with full opportunity for the public to attend by video conference, observe, and listen, and we can do so without, in a way that in some cases is more participatory, because we've allowed people to, particularly in committee meetings, to be able to just log into the Zoom meeting, and yes, we interact with them in a way that they can be home. So the resolution that we are proposing, that the board support for that says, provide enhanced, that the State School Board Association supports legislation to amend the open meetings law to provide enhanced opportunities for conducting of business at meetings through the use of remote meeting technology, authorize a committee to meet through video conferencing without a fixed location, I'll talk about in 1 second, and eliminate the requirement that we state where that person who's participating remotely will be for the reasons I just described. The reasons why authorizing a committee of a public body to meet through the use of video conferencing without a fixed location is because one of the things that we found was that trying to gather, and I'll take policy committee as an example, trying to gather the 3 central office administrators who participate in that committee and the 3 board members who are participating all in the same room is very difficult, and usually ended up that we met at night. And in that situation, that's really not most efficient for the committee, and nor is it most efficient for the health and welfare of our administrators who have already put in a long day. So that is the nature of this resolution, and it has a rationale that I've written. It's somewhat lengthy, but that's the way I am, which I would be submitted to the board, with board approval for consideration in October. But Omar, I noticed you had a question.
Yeah, is the ADA compliance requirement applied to all locations or at least one?
The ADA applies to all locations according to a webinar that I attended last week, in which the Assistant Director of the Committee on Open Government said it applies to all locations. And now the Committee on Open Government of the Department of State interprets the open meetings law, subject to judicial review, but they have a lot of opinions, and they are very, I'd say, absolutist in terms of looking at the issues of what this law means. So they've said, yeah, you have to notice them, and you have to make sure that your basement is ADA compliant. And if you can't have it in your hotel room, have it in the lobby.
So,
yeah.
Neil, both of these, when do we submit them to NISBA?
Okay.
When should people have if they have questions or comments with regard to these resolutions as we've reviewed them, right? Because right now they're on here for board consideration, and we're not.
Well, the deadline
adopting
for submitting is close of business on Friday, July 16th. Okay. I guess if there are any questions, this has been if you will, a work done by the advocacy committee of the last board. But if there are questions, I suppose we can. I mean, we don't really have time to come back and have another board meeting.
No, but if someone had, I mean, we've all, I know I've reviewed them, they've been on the agenda, I think we've all reviewed them. I don't know that anyone has any questions or opposition to them being submitted to NISBA for consideration. But is there a cutoff date that you would like any
well, I would
comments?
suggest probably if he can get any comments by Monday.
Mm-hmm.
Then that way, if there are questions about the rationale, remember, we put the rationale there. They don't vote on the rationale.
Right.
So it's really
The rationale is really more
the rationale is more
of-
for the information
Yep.
for the delegates. But if there are questions about the phrasing in the resolution itself, or things about the rationale that someone feels might be changed, tightened up, etc., sure, by Monday. Get it to
By
me.
Monday, all right, thank you
So
very
the
much.
there's a second resolution which really relates very much to our district, and it's something that Josh had brought up as something that he thought we should consider when I went to or participated in the Westchester Putnam School Board Association advocacy meeting with NISBA, and that has to do with child safety zones. Very simply, under the law, a school district is required to provide transportation to elementary school students who live more than 2 miles away from a school, and high school students and middle school students who live more than 3 miles away. A district can, by a vote of a resolution, a referendum, shorten or change those limits to a shorter mileage limit. But the mileage limit is based on strictly a measure of the most direct route by car from the front driveway of that home, or in the case of a private development, the front driveway to that private development, like Acton Bay, and a designated spot on the campus of the school. In our district, we have set mileage limits of 0.3 miles from CET. And the reason for that is because the board and the voters decided many years ago that the board did not want elementary school children crossing Route 129 in the morning or in the afternoon, even more so in the morning when people are rushing to get to the train station. But since we have a 0.3 mileage limit for CET, we are required to provide busing to every child who lives more than 0.3 miles away from that designated point at CET, even if they live 0.3 miles away, even if they live on the 200 block of Cleveland or on 186 Cleveland or 176 Cleveland, clearly they could walk. We encourage walking and biking to school, but we can't do that because we have to have a mileage limit that is just measured on a numerical or a distance. There is a provision in the law, Education Law 3635B, that states that you can establish a child safety zone, which is a zone that is closer than your limit, but you think it's not safe. However, the formula that is set forth in the Commissioner's regulations is very specific. How many lanes is the road? What's the traffic count on the road? How many railroad tracks are you crossing? Those kinds of things, which really doesn't relate to our community and presumably many other communities. So we cannot use that. Last year, 2 years ago, the City of Albany provided, or the school board asked NISBA to approve a resolution to create a right to have a child safety zone if crime or abandoned vacant buildings created a hazard such that it was felt that it would be unsafe for children to walk to school. The state legislature has passed that legislation. The governor has not yet signed it. So there already is, at least within NISBA and within the state legislature, an understanding that this distance doesn't always work. So this resolution would basically ask for NISBA to support revision of the statute or the regulations to establish a more flexible and meaningful set of criteria for the determination of child safety zone for which a school district may provide student transportation as an ordinary contingent expense. Why is ordinary contingent expense important? Because if we provide busing that we are not authorized to do by statute or by this referendum, we can provide the busing, we don't get any transportation aid for it. So that's the nature of this second resolution. And there is a rationale that I've developed and the committee has reviewed, which includes a description of our specific situation, which really is, you know, we would rather save money and have kids be more healthy as much as we can.
I'd like to point out one more thing on this, which is that the way the law is set up right now, it creates perverse effects where at the elementary school you really want to, there are students who get busing who perhaps don't need it, and at the middle school and high school it's the opposite way around, where you have students that are a little bit farther away that you think maybe should have busing, but they don't get it. You know, it hurts in both directions. Basically.
Well, I just add as a matter of history at the middle school, the busing limit at the middle school and the high school is 0.9 miles. And the reason is, it used to be longer, but then we found that students who lived on Baton Road and on Eckloff were within 1 mile and were required to walk to school. And there is no safe way to walk even along Route 129 to get to a crosswalk. So we probably 15 years ago, 17 years ago, we asked the voter approval for reforming or changing that mileage limit so that every child on Baton Road and every child on Eckloff would get busing for their safety.
All right, well, Neil, thank you very much for your work on these resolutions.
So I assume that in essence what we can say is, and I just want to have it on the record, so to speak, that subject to any changes that someone may bring to me, we will authorize the district clerk to submit these two resolutions to the resolutions committee before the deadline of July 16th.
Yep, I think that works. Good. Wonderful. All right, thank you very much. And now we will move on to ongoing business. So 7.1, recommended action that the Board of Education approves the amended 2021-2022 Board of Education meetings calendar as presented. Okay, can I get a second?
Second.
All right. On the question?
I
would just like to-
apologize. I've not been able to figure out what changed.
So basically I'll give you the quick here, up here, you'll see it, there's the, our July 22nd and August 19th work sessions have been replaced with a July 20th, August 11th, and August 24th training retreats. So they are not work sessions. Those work sessions have been taken off of the calendar and they will be replaced by board retreats, which are not noticed meetings per se, but we will be undertaking training.
I just presume, because normally we have in August, before the start of school, we usually have a work session or a meeting, which is a noticed meeting, sometime towards the latter part of August, in case there are last-minute appointments, last-minute contracts, other things that need to be dealt with before the before the beginning of school. Would it make sense to, well, we know we're going to do that if we need to, but would it make sense to make the August 24th meeting well, I guess
So
not.
I think if we need to, we will move forward with calling a special meeting because currently the August 24th training is set to be virtual. So if we need to call a special meeting, we will need to find a time where we can convene. So currently we will stick with these as our training sessions. And if we need to, if there is board action that needs to be taken, we will convene a special meeting. Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstain? Motion carries. And recommended action that the Board of Education approves the special education recommendations as presented.
So moved.
Second.
On the question?
Yes, just one thing that I guess would help when this is reviewed, and perhaps this is really more something to let the Director of Youth Personnel Services know, is that on the special ed backup material, there is not a specific indication of what schools students are attending when they are in out-of-district placements. Sometimes you find it in the narrative that is provided, sometimes you don't. I notice, and I mention this specifically because of one of our board members, that we have a couple of students whose recommendations are being considered who attend the Windward School. I mention that Hillmore because I know that's where you work now. And there may be other ones that would just be helpful.
Mm-hmm.
So it would be appreciated if the Director of Pupil Personnel Services could make sure that in each of those narratives, when a student is at an out-of-district placement, the narrative contains the name of the school so we know what we're looking at.
Absolutely.
Just so the board and the public knows, I intend to abstain from voting on anything related to the Windward School.
Well, since those have not been taken out of the...
These are the two that are taken out. This is our ongoing business. These have been taken out of the consent agenda.
Oh,
so.
I see. So
For that reason.
For that reason, I apologize. I hadn't noticed that.
That's okay. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? Abstain?
Same.
Motion carries. All right, and now we will move on to building use waiver for the Croton Academy of the Arts. Resolved that the Board of Education hereby approves the 2021-2022 building use waiver fee for Croton Academy of the Arts And be it further resolved that the use of the district's facilities are subject to any and all federal, state, and or local laws and or regulations related to the reopening of schools and the use and or reopening of school facilities during the COVID-19 pandemic, which may result in the denial, rescission, and or modification of any facility use requests.
So moved.
Second?
Okay. On the question? For the board and the public's knowledge, we pulled that out of the consent agenda as well, because in the past and potentially in the future, my husband does occasionally teach a course at Croton Academy of the Arts, so I abstained from voting on this one. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Opposed.
Abstain? Motion carries. Building use waiver for, recommended action resolved that the Board of Education hereby approves the 2021-2022 building use waiver fee for the Girl Scouts of America Croton troops, and be it further resolved that the use of the district's facilities are subject to any and all federal, state, and or local laws and or regulations related to the reopening of schools and the use and or reopening of school facilities during the COVID-19 pandemic, which may result in the denial, rescission, and or modification of any facilities use requests.
So moved.
Second. The phone forward.
And on the question?
Yes, I have a statement. As many of my fellow board members know, in the past I've opposed granting fee waivers to the Scouts on the basis of the fact that, evidenced by their oaths, there is a religious test for participation. However, the Girl Scout organization, unlike the Boy Scouts, has amended their oath to allow a Scout to indicate whatever personal belief that they have in place of God. For instance, saying to serve my community instead of serve God. As such, I feel completely comfortable granting the Girl Scouts a fee waiver for this year.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Oppose? Abstain?
Abstain.
Motion carries. Recommended action resolved that the Board of Education hereby approves the 2021-2022 building use waiver fee for the Boy Scouts of America Croton units, and be it further resolved that the use of the district's facilities are subject to any and all federal, state, and or local laws and or regulations related to the reopening of schools and the use and or reopening of school facilities during the COVID-19 pandemic, which may result in the denial, rescission, and or modification of any facilities use requests.
So moved.
Second.
On the question? All in favor? Sorry.
Hang on. Hang on. I was just fumbling my mic. So the Boy Scout oath begins with the words, "On my honor, I will do my best to do my duty to God." God comes before country, and the Scout law goes on to dictate that Scouts must be honest. An atheist or agnostic applicant to be a Scout can either say the oath and violate the Scout law through dishonesty, or they can not say the oath and not be a Scout. The oath, by its very words, deters the full participation of children who do not believe in a deity. I respect those who believe in a deity or deities. I myself regularly participate in synagogue services. But I also understand that there are members of our community who do not ascribe to the existence of any deity at all, and they should receive the same rights as anyone else does. Belief is the province of religious organizations, not of government or of schools. Now, I note the multiple assurances that I've received that the local Scout troops do not enforce any religious tests, and that the oath is just words, and that anyone can participate, but I don't have direct evidence of this. As such, I cannot vote in favor of this proposition this year, but I am somewhat less concerned than I was in previous years, and as such, I will be abstaining from the vote on this proposition for this year, with the idea that I will make a final decision on my feeling about it the next time we think about it.
Thank you. All in favor? Aye. Oppose?
Aye.
Abstain?
Abstain.
Motion carries. All right, we will now move on to 7.06. Recommended action, the Board of Education approves bond resolution number 1 as presented.
So moved.
Second.
On the question? All in favor?
Wait, before, on the question.
Yeah.
On the question, I note that we are tonight approving 4 separate bond resolutions. I think we should make it clear, as I think we have before, to the community, some people in the community may not understand this, that bond resolution number 1 calls for authorizing the acquisition of a 20-passenger van at a cost of $55,000, a 30-passenger van at an estimated maximum cost of $60,000, and an electric charger at an estimated maximum cost of $65,000. Just because we pass these resolutions, this resolution does not mean that we as a district are compelled to actually issue the bonds for the acquisition of number 1 of the first van or the second van or the full $65,000 of the cost of an electric charger and accompanying infrastructure. The resolution was adopted by the voters, and therefore we are basically authorizing the acquisition. But if we adopt bond resolution number 2, which is the next item on the agenda, which would allow us to purchase a 66-passenger electric powered vehicle, assuming we have the grants that are called for, we will not be purchasing the bond, and we will not be issuing bonds for the purchase of the 20-passenger van and the 30-passenger van that is in this resolution. We also, and I actually jumped ahead a little bit, because resolution number 3 talks about the purchase of an approximately 27-passenger electric powered vehicle, including infrastructure improvements. Once again, if we are able to obtain the funding that we are seeking. And resolution number 4 calls for the same item of purchase, another 27-passenger electric powered vehicle. Just to make it very clear, okay, these 4 coordinated resolutions do not mean that we will purchase a fossil fuel vehicle or fossil fuel vehicles, assuming that we get the grant money that is referenced in bond resolution number 2, and more significantly bond resolution number 3 and bond resolution number 4. But as we have discussed, we do need to provide for the busing of our students, as we talked about before. I just wanted to make sure that we all understand and the public understands that what the import of all 4 of these resolutions are collectively.
Correct. So yeah, these are essentially the approval of the resolutions that have been voted for by the voters. So.
And if I could just add, so we are now authorizing the financing through the issuance of serial bonds through this. This resolution actually has a 10-year lifespan. So if the district chooses not to act on that first one because we received financing through NYSERDA for the additional vehicles, this resolution and all 4 resolutions have a 10-year life, and there's no requirement to act on any of them.
Thank you. Thank you very much. All right. All in favor? Aye. Oppose? Abstain? Yes.
Can I ask a question? Do we have a motion?
Yes. we approve the bond resolution number 1 as presented. You moved it.
I did.
And Omar seconded it.
Okay, I might take that. All right.
Okay. Let's do that again. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstain? Motion carries. All right. And recommended action that the Board of Education approves bond resolution number 2 as presented.
So moved.
Second.
And I'll remember that.
On the question? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstain? Motion carries. Recommended action that the Board of Education approves bond resolution number 3 as presented.
So moved.
Second.
On the question? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? Motion carries. And recommended action that the Board of Education approves bond resolution number 4 as presented.
So moved.
Second.
On the question? All in favor? Opposed? Abstain? Motion carries. Okay, so now we are moved on to item 7.10, which is a proposal regarding the Croton Sustainability Committee on pollinator gardens that we will discuss. And I'm actually going to turn it over to Mr. Griffiths, if he doesn't mind, to give us a brief overview as he is the chair of the Sustainability Committee.
Sure, thank you very much. So some of the work of the sustainability has really centered around an interest of taking those spaces on our school grounds that are artificial, and by artificial I mean do not promote the growth of native species. One of the proposals contained within this document that is attached to the agenda does include the propagation of pollinator gardens, those species that really do a lot to promote, those species that keep our natural world sustainable. One of the others is to consider rain gardens, those features in the land that do promote a healthy distribution of groundwater, to consider where we have a lot of our lawns, to consider lawn conversion, a no-mow area so that we are increasing some of the native species to grow in those areas. And this work would be done in conjunction with Paul Gibbons and the facilities crew. So this is something that is a collaborative effort between the Sustainability Committee, especially those community members that take part in that committee, and the district.
Thank you. Does anyone have any questions for John regarding the proposals? Right?
Yeah, I just have one question. When you say a collaborative effort, who is ultimately responsible from the administration as far as what the scope and the expenses related to that project? Who finalizes those decisions?
So as a committee member, as the chair of the Sustainability Committee, I'd be working closely through the cabinet with both Dr. O'Connell and Mrs. Harrington Cohen, and obviously then coordinating with Paul Gibbons through facilities.
And is the budget for this already in this year to do all that, all those changes?
We have not actually allocated a dollar amount to this proposal at this time.
If I'm correct, John, I'm sorry. This is for the board to consider whether we would like the committee to move forward with sort of fleshing out what this proposal would be. So it is not, there isn't a contract or a dollar amount that's been allocated in the budget yet. It is more of a thumbs up from the board that yes, we support this continuing to work on this proposal and sort of fleshing out where the opportunities are, because I do believe that there's also a lot of opportunity for community involvement and volunteer work to work on all of these as well.
There is, and much of the work that's proposed is actually very low cost. A lot of it actually incurs cost savings when you're looking at dedicating areas that we actually are no longer going to state we are maintaining, and just sort of letting nature take its course as well.
Like a no-mow zone.
If I might just add, the proposal also outlines for some organization of donations. So that's I mean, to the extent that costs are minimized by that or offset by that, I think it's relevant.
Yeah, absolutely. Does anyone have any other questions for John? I wanted to take just a real quick moment to thank the three community members who are part of the Sustainability Committee who did put together this proposal. Lila Goldmark, Misha Murphy-Wortel, and Kathleen Reddy-Guidry for putting together such a comprehensive proposal. And so if for administration, I think what they're looking for from the board now is, as I said, a thumbs up, thumbs down as to whether we support the continuation of the work on this proposal by the Sustainability Committee. So,
Okay, just to come up with the scope of what would be done and the cost?
correct. So it would be to move forward on what the full scope would be and see where again, if there were costs for the district, that would then come back before the board. And if there were donations or community interest in volunteering on some of these projects as well, then that could move forward. Okay. Thumbs up, thumbs down on that? Alrighty. Thank you very much for that, Mr. Griffiths. And again, thank our Sustainability Committee for putting in the work on that. And now we will move on to recommended action that the Board of Education approves the contract for services between the Croton-Harmon School District and the NYU Metro Center as presented.
So moved.
Second.
On the question?
I do.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Is that echoing? Sorry, okay. I do have a few questions and comments. While I wholeheartedly support diversity, equity, and inclusion and the work of the Equity Stakeholder Task Force, and I look forward to continuing to support the task force in the upcoming year and beyond, I have serious concerns about our engagement with the NYU Metro Center as our leader for DEI. And I do not support any current or future contracts with this organization. I urge my fellow board colleagues and administration to consider the same, and here are 3 reasons why and questions I have. The first reason why I believe that our district should not engage in any current or future contracts with the NYU Metro Center relates to the contract itself. The contract, which is on the agenda for approval tonight, is for the work that has already been completed by the NYU Metro Center in the 2021 school year. However, the contract was only provided to the board and the public just a few days ago, after the contract expired on June 30th, 2021. Why didn't the NYU Metro Center provide this contract prior to work beginning? Furthermore, the NYU Metro Center seems to have gone outside the scope of work as defined in the contract, as well as failed to deliver on its goals. In the contract, the scope of work of the NYU Metro Center is defined to include engagement with the district administrative team, the Board of Education, and a district-wide stakeholder equity team. Yet the NYU Metro Center also conducted multiple faculty staff development trainings, some of which I would consider to have controversial content. I believe there was also at least 1 meeting with a CHHS student group. Why did the NYU Metro Center go beyond the scope of work as provided in the contract? In addition to that, they also failed to live up to the goals as defined in the contract. The very first line of the contract states how the NYU Metro Center will be tailoring their work specific to the needs of Croton-Harmon. And the first of only 3 goals listed in the contract is to build exposure and awareness of issues of equity and inequity within the district. As we heard during the June 3rd meeting with the equity stakeholder team, the recommendations did not include an analysis of what the task force found in terms of the specific inequities that are occurring in the Croton-Harmon schools. It was clear that under the leadership of the NYU Metro Center, and not the fault of the task force members, very little or possibly no time was spent on defining the actual education-related disparities that are occurring across different subgroups, which may negatively affect student outcomes. In addition, the NYU Metro Center makes clear in the contract that they are not focused on the full range of diversity, equity, and inclusion that I believe our students in district deserve. The contract states that the NYU Metro Center CSS group focuses explicitly on race, and though they state that an intersectional approach to addressing disparities related to race, ethnicity, language, culture, gender, sexual orientation, disability, religion, and socioeconomic status is required. From my perspective, disparities encountered by race or English language learners or children with special needs or economically disadvantaged children or any other subgroup can be vastly different from one another and deserve individualized analysis and attention in order to define and implement approaches and solutions that can lead to the best outcomes for all students. As a Board of Education trustee that has the ability to affect policies, practices, budget, and resources, I really want to know where disparities are occurring and to who, so that I can help mobilize our talent and treasure towards addressing them. I am extremely disappointed and concerned that this was not a first step in the process, because it is a real missed opportunity to identify and prioritize where we can make positive changes in the lives of all our students who may be struggling or experiencing adverse outcomes. The second reason why I believe that our district should not engage in any current or future contracts with the NYU Metro Center is that instead of providing us with a tailored solution to address the needs of our students, it has become clear that the NYU Metro Center is setting the stage and has already begun to promote the tenets of critical race theory, which is a far left political ideology. Whether you agree with the tenets of critical race theory or not, it is clearly a one-sided political viewpoint which has no place in Croton's K-12 public education. Just the way we also don't want any far-right or any one-sided political beliefs being taught in our K-12 public schools and indoctrinating our children. Critical race theory tenets are unsettled, unagreed upon in the community, discriminatory, and seem to be in direct violation of multiple policies of our school district, including Teaching About Controversial Issues Policy number 4810, the Non-Discrimination and Equal Opportunity Policy number 0100, Dignity for All Students Policy number 0115, and Harassment of Employees Policy number 9010.2, just to name a few. Public schools are not meant to indoctrinate, they are meant to educate, teaching children how to think, not what to think. Finally, the third reason why our district should not engage in any current or future contracts with the NYU Metro Center is that what our community should know about this group is that, in the words of our NYU Metro Center leader herself, in a document called Staying the Course, Predictable Challenges on the Course to Equity, which was given by her to our very own stakeholder group, the last paragraph implies that if there's disagreement with this ideology or any outward lack of showing support, you may be complicit in upholding white supremacy, systemic racism, homophobia, transphobia, misogyny, xenophobia, Islamophobia, and injustice, period. I'm a true supporter of DEI and committed to working within the bounds of my Board of Ed role to improving any equities that are occurring, but I do not agree with the tenets of critical race theory. Should I be called these awful words, labeled, and judged? Is this what we want from an organization that is hired to promote diversity, equity, and inclusion? This does not seem like language that an unbiased facilitator should be using to promote open, safe, and fair discussion, understanding, and improvement across our varied school constituents on the controversial topic of how to best address DEI in schools. In closing, I'd also like to make a clarification for the board and the community that at the June 3rd meeting, it was stated that the New York State Culturally Responsive Sustaining Education Framework is mandated by the state. But in fact, it is not mandated and is simply a guidance document that districts can or do not have to use. I'm not sure why a representative from the NYU Metro Center, who also heard this and was on the meeting, did not clarify this point as well. The Croton-Harmon School District's children, families, and DEI efforts deserve better. Given that the NYU Metro Center worked within an unapproved contract, went outside the scope of the contract, failed to deliver on its primary goal in the contract, and is clearly aligned with the tenets of critical race theory, and has proven to be a biased facilitator, the real question for our district is what to do next. With last year's NYU Metro Center contract having just ended, and another one not yet put before the board or the public for the 21-22 school year, this is a pivotal moment for the future of our school community to come together to ensure the best success of DEI for all. Let's find a better partner or even consider taking this work in-house. Thank you.
If I may, I would just like to address the point about the timing of the contract and offer some clarity for the board. NYU Metro Center did provide the contract before the scope of work began. At that time, we planned to have the funding for that contract fall within the BOCES contract, since NYU is a coastal service under BOCES. With it being under the BOCES contract, it would have been a part of the general approval of BOCES services and not requiring separate board approval. That did change last minute, where we decided that we did have some extra title federal funding, and it was incorporated then under that funding source. At that time, it should have been brought before the board. That was an oversight, but that contract was put into place prior to the services during the 2021 school year.
And to be clear, the contract that is on the agenda for this evening is for the already completed school year. So
That's
it is for
correct.
the 2021 school year.
And was signed by Assistant Superintendent of Business in February.
Correct.
So that's during the process that Mr. Griffith spoke about. I would just want to say in response to what Mary had said, that Mary raises some important things for the board to consider. With regard to the 2021 contract, which was provided as described to the district before the start of services, I do not see any basis legally to not approve this contract. The more significant questions of what happens going forward are certainly worthy of discussion. I am not. I think the buzzword of, quote, critical race theory as something to be opposed to is not productive to our district or productive to society in general. The more important questions that I think are raised by Mary, and the appropriate questions, are what will we as a school district do to address each of the areas that we can, professional development, curriculum, and so on, to make sure that we have provided students with information, students with perspectives, not dictating a perspective, but with perspectives and with the ability to critically assess them and to learn and grow on their own. And to the extent that that current program supports those objectives, I think that's good. To the extent that it goes beyond those objectives, I think it is not good. I do realize, Mary, as you said, that the culturally responsive framework issued by the Board of Regents is a guideline, but it is a guideline that informs our own district's work on curriculum, work on materials, work on professional development towards an objective that I believe everyone on this board is supportive of. And I don't want to get bogged down on, a code word or a phrase that takes us away from the work that we need to do. And I'm hopeful that the Equity Stakeholder Committee, as it has existed and will come next year, will look at things through that lens.
I also have a small comment. Having participated in the equity stakeholder meetings throughout the year, I found them both to be both supportive and challenging in that they made me think. I found myself thinking in ways that I had not thought before because I was exposed to viewpoints, exposed to experiences that I had not been exposed to before. That the people who had those experiences had not felt comfortable sharing with me before. Now, some of those are things which are measurable quantitatively. And we do a lot of quantitative measurement of how our students are doing, broken down by demographic groups. The demographic groups may not be perfect, and we may not include every subgroup, but we do look at these data, and they are in our annual report. Obviously, being a small district, we cannot always publish disaggregated data because that has the tendency to potentially violate student privacy, especially when you're talking about small class sizes. What I worry about more, and why I think that this work is important, and why that I think that Metro Center has been effective, is that it allowed us to look at the things that we are not measuring. And I'm not talking about how this grade did on that test or in that subject, or what the traditional educational outcomes of career placement or college placement are, but rather the emotional and social experience of our students. And we like to think of ourselves and to think of our district as a very perfect place in that regard. But what was opening to me was that that is not the experience of every student. And I am not convinced that we are actually, while we want to establish a strong connection with every student in our school district, we want to do that, and we've talked about it repeatedly as we talk about social and emotional learning and support services for our students. And we want to say that every student has a faculty member or a staff member that they feel comfortable speaking to. Some of the anecdotal reports that we have and some of the stories that we hear tell us that what we think we've got and what we've really got are not necessarily the same thing. We still have work to do there. And I think that's where this is effective for us. I think that we've learned a lot about it. I mean, frankly, I didn't know this. I thought things were a little bit different than they turned out to be based on just my listening. So I think I'm okay with this past year. So there is no contract before us for the coming year yet. But I do know that we have work to do. And I frankly don't care what label we assign to it in terms of naming. I'm just interested in our students having the best social and emotional learning experience and the best academic experience that they can have, regardless of who they are and where they come from and what they look like and who they love or how they feel about gender, etc. That's all I have to say about it.
Thank you, Aaron.
I'll add that I think that I agree with you, Mary, that this is for a period that has already passed, and at the same time, it's a legal document that's been executed by a nation of the district. So I think we have to approve this because it already happened and it's been already signed. But I agree with you, moving forward, we should probably have more discussions around what we're trying to do in the district.
I just want to clarify one point too, just in terms of the task force experience that I've heard about. I am in support of promoting an environment where students and families are safe and feel safe to talk about their experiences in the school community. I think that students and their families need to feel safe, respected, valued, accepted, and appreciated. I think there are definitely parts of that framework that would make a big difference promoting cultural sensitivity and responsiveness. I am very much in support of assessing and addressing, again, any actual educational disparities that lead to inequitable opportunities or outcomes is worth certainly looking at and addressing. Increasing exposure to a variety of people and cultures, very much in support of. And using restorative disability practices, which I'm much interested in learning about. What I'm specifically referring to is any messaging or teachings that may be included moving forward, where people are labeled or judged based solely on the color of the skin that they were born into. I'm against that. I'm against an ideology that pits people as either oppressors or oppressed based solely on that. There are also difference of opinions around whether racism is something that's ordinary in America, all around us, in all systems, rampant, and that are based to certain people of certain colors, and that where other people are oppressed just based on those same immutable characteristics. I am not supportive of that, and I believe, again, that there is a large part of our community that is against that, if not all, really. I don't know, but that is a controversial topic, and it should not be settled, and it should not be being brought forth from an organization like the NYU Metro Center in one way. And it's good that they made you think in certain ways. There are also other thinkings around why those things exist and how to best address them. And I think things that people would agree on. So just to be clear, there are many things that have occurred from the work that's been done with the equity stakeholder group that can and should be used moving forward. But I think we need to be clear moving forward about what we all feel and what is within our policies related to, again, labeling, judging people based solely on things like their skin color.
Thank you, Mary. Again, I do want to make very clear what is on the agenda right now is the contract that has been that for the previous year. We do not have a new contract ahead of us yet. I know in our initial discussions with central administration with regard to looking at our parking lot and looking at our work sessions for the year, we are tentatively planning for our September work session to be one where we are going in, sort of taking a deeper dive into what the presentation from the Equity Stakeholder Committee was this past year and what some of our next steps and thoughts should be in the coming year as to what those priorities are. So I do believe that that is a discussion that we will have at a work session. Right now, what we have on the agenda is for this contract that has, for the prior year for services that have been rendered.
So there will be no work with the NYU Metro Center until that discussion in September occurs. Is that correct?
No, you didn't sign anything.
We have not signed anything, correct.
And there will be no work that's done with them moving forward until that's reviewed and signed?
Okay, good.
Okay. So, unless we have any more.
Did kind of give the answer to the questions Mary?
We will, go ahead, John.
No, we have not had any contract or discussions about next year as of yet. As the board probably is aware, our consultant Natalie Zwerger, who did the presentation to the board on the equity stakeholders recommendation, is no longer with the company. We, as of this date, have not yet heard back about a new consultant or have we made any plans for the next school year.
I do just want to add too, that wouldn't prohibit us from working with the equity stakeholder task force members, right, and any improvements. I mean, we should continue the DI efforts as much as we can, but again, just my concern is around that leadership with our group.
So the equity stakeholder committee, I'm sorry, it is a district-wide committee. It is not contingent upon the NYU Metro Center. So that is a district-wide committee that will continue into this year.
Wonderful.
Okay. So now we've got the vote on the question. All in favor? Aye. Oppose? Abstain?
Wait, Mary.
I'm sorry, Mary?
You're
Or you're moving abstain?
I oppose, I guess.
Okay. Right. Thank you. Now we will move on to instructional personnel. Recommended action that the Board of Education approves the appointment of Nicole Mundell, 1.0 FTE elementary teacher, as a leave replacement for Craig Campanaro at Carrie E. Tompkins Elementary School, effective August 30, 2021 through June 30, 2022, at an annual salary per the CTA contract, MA Step 1.
So moved.
Second.
On the question? All in favor? Aye. Oppose? Abstain? Motion carries. Recommended action, be it resolved that the Board of Education, upon the recommendation of the Superintendent of Schools, hereby appoints Mark Malloy as a 1.0 FTE elementary teacher, elementary tenure area, at the Pierre Van Portland Middle School at a salary per the next CTA contract, MA plus 15, step 2. Mr. Malloy is appointed to a 4-year probationary term as an elementary teacher, commencing on August 30, 2021, and probationary term ending on August 29, 2025 in the tenure area of elementary. In order to be eligible for appointment to tenure, said teacher must receive at least 3 APPR ratings of effective or highly effective pursuant to Article 3012D of the Education Law during the 4-year probationary term, and may not receive an ineffective rating in the final year of probation. Mr. Malloy has professional certification in childhood education 1 through 6 and students with disabilities 1 through 6.
Could I ask a question?
Wait,
Could we move the motion first?
Yep.
so moved. Second.
On the question?
With the previous motion, there was an application that was attached to the motion. This one did not have one. Is there an application for Mr. Malloy?
I think that's the question.
That is the
Is there an
application was not attached actually into the executive agenda.
Yeah.
We'll have to make it a
It looks like Tracy didn't add it.
Yeah, it appears that we did not add that contract because this was a later addition to the agenda. We can send that.
Yeah.
Correct? We can send an addendum. He was in the office for no reason.
Yeah, his onboarding was very late last week.
Correct. Okay. So we can send the application to the board. Does anyone else have any other questions? All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Oppose? Abstain? Motion carries. All right. Recommended action that the Board of Education approves the 2021-2022 part-time instructional personnel appointments as presented.
Second.
On the question? All in favor?
Aye.
Oppose? Abstain? Motion carries. Recommended action that the Board of Education approves the mentor appointments for the 2021-2022 school year as presented.
Second.
On the question? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Oppose? Abstain?
One abstaining.
Motion carries. All right. And now we will move into the consent agenda. So recommended action that the Board of Education approves all items under the consent agenda as presented.
So moved.
Second.
Okay. On the question? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Oppose? Abstain? Motion carries. All right. Now we are into the closing of the meeting, which is our second hearing of the public. We still do not have any public who have joined us this evening. One note of clarification, and I know that there may have been some question about this with regard to the limit of 6 public who can come into the room. It is that as a school building, we still have 6-foot social distance requirements and mask wearing, which means that if someone wants to come in and address the board, and if more than 6 people want to come in to address the board, it simply means that they would come in, they could speak to the board, and then they could leave. It does not mean that we only allow 6 people for the entirety of the meeting. So people can come and they could speak to the board and they could leave and someone else could come in. So in case there was any question on that regarding to people. So just wanted to make that clear, and we do look forward to having community members come and speak to us. From there, we will move on to board reports. So we did have a couple of items that went through with some of our committees following up until the end of our prior board. You have heard from Neil with regard to the advocacy committee and the work that they did. You have been hearing quite a bit from the board development committee as we plan our retreats, the first of which will be on July 20th, so I'll step in quickly for Iris here. So July 20th, we will be having our first retreat of our retreat series. We will be here, you can come here for dinner prior to the meeting starting at 6:15, and then we will start at 7 p.m. sharp. So that is next up on for board development. Was there anything to report out for policy committee, Neil?
Only thing to report is that we are still in the middle of working on policy 5152, and some of the issues that we have talked about earlier, and we will follow through, and obviously new policy committee members will step in. Andrea, as a former board member, has agreed to participate, which she can do as a non-board member by invitation in our discussion so that she can finish up that policy. Other than that, we will then, I guess, have kind of a orientation on policy and policy development, and then we will get to work.
Great, thank you. Audit committee did not meet.
Audit committee did meet.
Oh, you did meet, sorry.
We did meet. We met on June 29th. There are a couple of items that were discussed. The good news is we're getting lots of federal money. The bad news is it means audit work. There will be a single audit this year as a result. So that is, it's going to cost us somewhere in the neighborhood of $2,500 to $3,500 to do the work. Getting money, you have to spend money, and you get money to do audit work. We haven't had one in quite some time, and it's required to audit 40% of our federal money, so that's going to be a fun time in late August, mid to late August probably, and the business office is going to be pretty busy with that. We received the risk assessment for 2020-21. It's very good news. We have a couple of items that remain in medium, but nothing that is a huge concern. But then we're going to be getting a corrective action report. Is that correct? Is that the next thing?
Correct.
Yes.
Right. That will go
Soon.
out to the board within the next 2 weeks.
Great. The internal audit is going to be on STAC, which is the System to Track and Account for Children. Did we agree on that? Right? We talked about that.
It was on stack.
Right.
Yes.
That's it. The past audit was on STAC and also had pretty good results. And finally, agreed on a meeting schedule. I think the next audit committee meeting will be sometime in late September. We'll probably meet again sometime November-ish. In February, we'll do internal audit and risk assessment. And we spent some time talking about what the focus area might be for the coming internal. Now I'm looking at my notes and I understand what the heck I was talking about. The internal audit for the coming year might be on fund balance management,
Or payroll.
Or payroll.
And I will be reaching out to the new committee members to look at available dates for their calendars for the next school year.
Is either or? And who makes that decision? Payables or fund balance?
It's by agreement of the committee and the business officials. So we sit down together in the committee meeting and we decide. And usually we end up taking the recommendations of the administration on these things.
Although
And the auditors.
I would hope and trust that we will also have at least the audit committee reporting to the board what that recommendation is, and so that we get a thumbs up from the town on that before we expend. I mean, obviously, yeah, we're looking at things that are of significance, but there are times at which, you know, we just want to make sure we're looking at things that are most important.
And with internal audit, these things sort of rotate around year to year, and you want to sort of spread it around, and I don't think we've done either fund balance management or payroll for some time, so kind of their turn. That's what we're returning. But that's not set in stone yet.
All right, any other, did communications meet, Josh?
Communications did not meet.
Okay. All right, I think that concludes our committees, committee reports, and now we will move on to polling of the board. Does anyone have anything for polling? Neil?
Polling of the board, item number 1 is something that I picked up listening to Mr. Griffiths with the question about the pollinator garden. One of the committees that, or liaisons, we did not talk about is sustainability.
Because that is folded into the steering committee.
Health,
Safety,
Okay,
sustainability, steering.
Because okay, that's fine. I know that Andrea had been very much involved in sustainability, and I didn't know if she was wearing the hat of the liaison to health, wellness, safety, and sustainability when she was discussing.
She had been doing both.
Yes,
she was the
she was on.
liaison for both, for
Okay.
sustainability and the steering committee.
So I guess my only question, and this may be something that, since Josh said, well, I'll do health and safety as long as.
I meant all of that. I meant that's the whole.
Oh, okay, so if there's sustainability for within that, that's where you'll be, okay.
So the reason that we elected to condense some of it was that each of those, so sustainability, health and safety, culture of respect, all report into the steering committee. So everything that those individual committees are working on then goes to the steering committee. So having the board liaison at the steering committee level meant, one, giving us a little bit of breathing room in terms of the amount of committees that we need a liaison on, but also still making sure that we're getting the information from all of those subcommittees.
That's fine.
That was well put, Sarah, because that's how we begin every steering committee. Each committee gives a brief report of what they're working on. So it's really a nice way to get the big picture of what's going on and the connectivity between and among the committees.
Does anyone else have anything for polling? So this is usually, for our new board members, this is usually where we also, we talk about or report out things from district-wide committees where we are liaisons. So the board reports is saved just for the board committees, and then we use this time to discuss either things that, things we've gotten within the community, or committees that we've served on that we want to bring to the attention of the board. Given that most of those district-wide committees wound down toward the end of the year, they haven't met, so we don't have as much to spread forth here. But yeah, if we have nothing else for polling, we will move into items needed for the next Board of Education meeting. So our next meeting will be our September 2nd business meeting.
Nope.
What do you mean?
It's your next meeting. Next meeting is August 4th. I think it's August 4th when we have to set the.
Oh, you're right. I'm so sorry.
Be there,
Yeah,
but
you know what? And I'm looking at my notes here, and it's saying September 2nd. You're right. August 4th will be the August business meeting of the Board of Education, which our newly elected vice president will be running, because I will not be able to attend that meeting. So that will be our next meeting. In between that, we will have, of course, as I mentioned, board retreat. So if anyone has anything that they would like, if anyone as the committees begin to meet, if there's anything, I think maybe related to policy committee and stuff you were working on that you would have for the August board meeting, business meeting, or the September business meeting, just let board officers know. Yes, Josh?
Do we need to do any revision to the parking lot? I don't remember when this was the parking lot was last revised on 4/20. And I remember, did we take another survey on questions and topics?
The parking lot, I believe, has been updated since then, maybe.
It says at the
not
top, it
updated.
says revised 420, and I thought it was more recently than that.
Yeah, it was. We were just actually looking at it in the last agenda planning meeting. So I would encourage our board members to look at the parking lot, look at that link, see what the parking lot topics are that we are considering for the coming year. If you see that there's something in there that you would like to add, or a specific question you have related to something that's already on the parking lot, please let board officers know, because we will be sitting down to work with administration to plan out our work sessions for the coming year, and then we take a lot of that from items that are on the parking lot, things that we need to go back to and follow up on or do a deeper dive on.
I just requested that.
Oh, absolutely.
You're right, Josh. It does say at the top, Tracy has it written revised on the date you mentioned, but she's revised it as, I think June 30th or something along those lines. So I'll make sure she updates
Yes.
that piece.
And Omar, if you go in under your trusted account, you should have access. If you do not, send the request access. Tracy owns that document. All right. Does anyone else have anything else? If not, then we will end our recording, and thank you to any public who have joined us tonight for the meeting and the live streaming. And we will head into executive session, and we expect to adjourn immediately following executive session. Neil?
I just want to make sure we didn't forget anything.
Oh, no, not at all. All right, so in that case, recommended action that the Board of Education enters into executive session to discuss the proposed pending or current litigation, and to discuss the CSEA custodial and ATU Amalgamated Transportation Union contract negotiations.
Second.
On the question? All in favor?